welcome to Bronx Talk. Not a lot of introduction tonight. We're going to get right to discussion. Our guest tonight is the Majority Leader of the City Council. She also happens to be the council member from the 18th Council District in the Bronx, which is Soundview, Classen Point, Castle Hill, Unionport, Harding Park, Parkchester, and Westchester Square. Please join me in welcoming back to Bronx Talk the Honorable Amanda Farías. Nice to have you with us.
Thanks for having me again, Gary.
I asked you a question just before we started, and I'm going to re-ask it, and I want you to answer it in the same way, or answer any way you want, of course. You love this job? You love doing what you do?
I do.
Why is that?
I find it to be the most rewarding job that I've had so far in my few years here.
80 years of working. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, what's been really rewarding about it is I was born and raised in this district, and it's the one way that I found that I can give a direct investment right back into the people that helped raise me and put me in this position. You know, it's not only about who votes me in, it's my everyday interactions with young people that are going through the education system that I'm helping provide. It's the people aging in place where I'm bolstering the senior services or the ways they get to stay active and mobile and engaged in the district. And it's the everyday families that are trying to find the best ways to provide for their family and create generational wealth, where I get to build the housing, make it affordable, recreate the park that maybe they played in to make it better for their kids. So it feels really comprehensive and full circle for me.
It must be some frustration, because I'm sure there are many things you see and you say, gee whiz, I would like to do this. And then, of course, there's any number of obstacles to get there. Frustrating, or do you always see, if I stay with it and do it, I can somehow navigate to get the funding or build the park or the housing or whatever it is?
Yeah, well, I think there's always some frustrations with a lot of the things that have to happen in bureaucracy or in government, but I always start with knowing that I'm a really good negotiator and that I have the best interests and intentionality in mind when it comes to representing my district. I mean, this budget alone, I was able to secure really amazing wins for the community, almost $29 million in investment that came right into my district, and that's just through the budget. That doesn't include my Metro North negotiations, where I secured over $195 million in local investments. And over the last several months, negotiating with the administration, I'm bringing in a new school into the Castle Hill Zariga area. So the budget is always, it's a living document, I like to say. It's always moving and changing, and that also means that it's on me to keep my foot on the pedal and make sure that my negotiations are also moving with the budget.
You essentially answered what my next question was going to be, is what's the most satisfying thing? And for folks watching, I mean, just think about, what it would be like to say, wow, my work turned into $190+ million to invest in the Bronx. I do want to ask you about, and we mentioned it just before the show, about the role of Majority Leader. So people will understand, we say it, you said we talked about it somewhere along the way in the past, but I think it's worthwhile for people to know the position, what kinds of issues come up for you that are unique to you as opposed to your colleagues in the City Council, et cetera. So what's it like?
Yeah, well, I get to have the honor and privilege of being in leadership with the Speaker over the City Council. And my main functionality has been focused primarily around being the presiding officer, doing the actual governing functions of what the meeting is, helping set the agenda, looking at the legislative items, working with members to move their bills and their packages. I've even, really been critical in some of the land use negotiations that we've seen over the last year and a half, but also working with members to help bring their priorities to meet the Speaker's priorities and making it New York's priorities as we move through agenda setting. I think the perspective that I've been able to bring as a Bronx member is an outer borough perspective. It's one of a working family's perspective, one that's even I think what's been most helpful for me and for members to kind of work with me on is how do we find consensus, bridging the gap between what folks want and desire and making sure the goalposts start moving, but really bringing them to the center and saying, in order to get the max benefit, we have to find compromises and finding consensus. And I've really been trying to help both myself and my borough navigate that.
That's fascinating because, of course, people of the Bronx, and you know this like you know your own name, we say, hey, what about us? They don't know who we are. They don't know how we live. They read what they see in the papers and they think that's the whole story. So you're able to kind of represent the Bronx, and a Bronx woman's experience is what is kind of helping to, govern or make decisions in the city council, or at least drive energy. Does being the majority leader take up time and, of course, energy from you that may distract you from council, from your district?
I would say when I first became majority leader, one of the few
And then we're going to move on after this.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I'm sorry.
Well, one of the first notions that I think a couple people had mentioned to me was, you're going to have to be able to manage giving something up. And you're going to have to be more in City Hall or more in the district.
That's, I guess, what I'm asking.
And luckily, I've been able to find a great way to balance that. I think my district, my first 2 years in office, I really set the tone with the annual events, the consistency with meetings, having a really good team. And that's really just been able to be replicated both in City Hall and still in this district. And so I get to still be with the kids and, show up to the senior center and plan my annual events because there's consistency there. And with that consistency equals reliability. And my constituency knows that. And I've been able to really focus in during the week on what the City Hall responsibilities are and how to still be accessible to members and to make sure I'm bringing Bronx priorities, making them citywide priorities, and focusing in on that.
Folks may or may not know, because she does so many other things. She's the chair of the Committee on Economic Development, and we're going to get into the budget and all the things you were talking about. Can you, stepping back from the things that you talk about in committee, how is the city doing? I mean, can you grade our economy right now, or what are the biggest issues in building the economy? And one thing I will mention, because Bronxites deal with it every day, we want to support our small businesses. On the other hand, the large businesses, Target over there on 220th Street is the largest Target, or the best-selling Target in the East Coast, and we need those because they, of course, employ a lot of people. Is there a difficult balance in the large and small businesses?
Yeah, I
know I asked you 5 questions at once, but go ahead.
It's okay. I think overall the economy is faring better. I mean, we've seen economic forecasts over the last 2 years that showcase revenue is revenue is growing and it's being generated. And that was seen here in this budget. We've been able over the last 3 budgets to continuing putting money in the rainy day fund and in our reserves. That is proof of more revenue being generated.
And health for the economy.
And a healthy economy, or at least a growing towards a more healthier economy for us. I think generally where we try to and make more investments in, both in the small economies and small businesses and larger economies throughout the city, is looking at how we can bolster tourism, how do we get more, business in, more events that are in the tri-state area that we can benefit from. One of the things that we're foreseeing and trying to move towards is FIFA. That's on its way here. We're trying to make sure that the city and the outer boroughs can have events and activities through the Economic Development Corporation and future planning to make sure our economies benefit from that. And that is to ensure that both people are visiting local bars and restaurants and hotels.
Come to our neighborhoods, folks.
That can host you.
That's what she's telling you.
Yeah, and put the games up, and you can eat locally and try what New York City really not only looks like, but tastes like, right? We have a lot of different backgrounds.
Let's talk about fiscal year 26. So we've got a $116 billion budget. Was this a painful process? Was it, I mean, there are always disagreements, but reasonably easy? Are you satisfied that we got somewhere, that kind of worked out through all the negotiations?
Yeah, I think this budget cycle was far easier than other budgets where we've seen.
Really?
Absolutely. I'm sure the November election has helped in that process, but I also think we've been in the midst of trying to Trump-proof this budget. And so what we've really made sure to do is in certain areas, when I would say over $677 million of baselined guaranteed amounts of funding have gone into this budget. That's for cultural groups, that's for schools, that's for the education system, it's for senior programming, legal services. There's been a variety of baseline funding where that means every budget negotiation, no matter who the mayor is, will have a foundational point that's starting at the basic needs for everyday New Yorkers.
So that stuff is ingrained in place, and so there can't be touched. I have the list here. It was in early childhood education, K through 12 programs, CUNY, public safety, health services, both physical and mental, library and cultural services. One thing that has come up from advocates, and I asked it when I interviewed candidates running for all the offices coming up, is the notion of a 1% parks budget. That parks are saying, and you talk to any of the people who work in our parks, we don't have enough maintenance people, et cetera, and the mayor had promised a 1% budget. It's been 0.6% or something like that. Is that disappointing? Or are we going to get there? What's your point of view about the parks?
Well, I'm not the mayor of New York City, so I can't tell you if we're going to get there.
Okay.
But I can say every budget we inch closer and closer to increasing that percentage. I think this budget cycle we went on prioritizing PEP officers, headcount, seasonal workers, because that's really what we're hearing from our neighborhoods and from everyday people that use the parks. That's where they'd like to see investments. And so we know not only that's prioritizing a job pipeline, but it's prioritizing what people that are using our parks desire. But I do think there's a way to get to that space of looking at a 1% for parks in our budget. It's the right thing to do and the right thing to prioritize for New York.
Let's just talk a little bit about legislation that you have in your committee that's sitting there on the table waiting to be pushed through. We can go through each one. The pay transparency legislation, which is a local law to amend the administrative code in relation a study on pay employment equity for private employees. I have an idea of how I think what that means and what it might do. So why don't you just explain what that is? Because pay equity, I know there's a lot of people saying, yeah, I deserve, right? I mean, is that what we're talking about?
Absolutely. I mean, the perspective we're talking about it in the council is pay equity and pay transparency for women, and particularly women of color. On July 10th, which was just a little while ago, we passed Black Women's Equal Pay Day, where that's as long as Black women have to work into the following year, 6 months into the following year, to make what a white male counterpart in their same field and their same title had to make just the previous year before. And Latino women are waiting all the way until October 8th to make that same annual salary. And so what we're seeing...
And you've said this was studied and it's data that's ingrained and they are seeing that this is the case.
Absolutely. I mean, right now, and I spoke about this a little bit a couple weeks ago, Black women are making about 66 cents to a white man's dollar. For Black women that are municipal workers, they're about 68 cents. So we're studying in different sectors and industries and really trying to see where are the missing pockets. I think what myself and council members Caban and Majority Whip Brooks Powers are attempting to do with this additional package, and we've been working on this, legislative cycle after legislative cycle to try to inch forward. We have 3 bills on the salary transparency package. Intro 984 is my bill, and it strengthens pay transparency. We have 982 from Councilmember Caban, that's expanding salary disclosures from private corporations. So we both are focused on the private corporation business side because most of the regulatory measures that we have in place legislatively are on the municipal or nonprofit sector. And then we have on the contractor on equity reporting, Intro 808 from Majority Whip Brooks Powers. And this package is now focusing in on the private sector side where we know we have a lot of women of color, immigrants, really just generally everyone that needs to have more transparency in the wages that they're working within with their counterparts.
So there are, for these 3 bills, at least as far as I could tell, there were more than 20 co-sponsors. Obviously, what are there, 52 members in the city council?
Yeah, 51.
51. So you're on the way to getting them passed. Do you anticipate in the next session these will work?
I anticipate passing this package by the end of this session, if not earlier.
Wow.
I mean, we are currently negotiating. We want to make sure we're doing these bills right. We're talking to businesses, both large and small. We're talking to different stakeholders and nonprofit folks. And we're talking to women in different sectors, kind of make sure we do this right. We want something that sticks and that can actually be beneficial to New Yorkers. I mean, we know pay equity isn't just a regular benefit, it's a right that people have.
So, you're talking about this and so passionately, and I know you believe it because this is coming out of your committee. I've asked this question before, and it still sticks in my mind. And this is what some people call DEI, which I had never used the term before. And I've said this, and I'll say it publicly. We've been doing this show for 30 years. I believe that the subtext of every show, every conversation I have, has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Obviously, what's coming out of Washington is telling us if New York City does stuff like this, then, we'll stop funding it. I don't see how, in the dialogues we have and in the dialogue you talk about, just bringing it up around there, that we can remove this concept from our government, from the way we live, from when we interact with our neighbors in the deli. I mean, I don't know how to even ask the question to resolve it. It just doesn't make sense to me that all of a sudden we could say, now we don't do this. So I'm just curious your reaction to that. It sticks in my mind because when you talk about that, it makes sense. Everything I've been taught in school and everything that I've been doing here on TV for BronxNet reflects this, and it supports it, yet I'm hearing that all of a sudden now it can't exist.
Yeah.
It's blowing my mind. Sorry, I know I've had the chance, since I have the microphone, I have a chance to say what I think.
I think you're not alone in that dismay of how do we not incorporate something that's already embedded in New York City values in every corner of this city, of each of our boroughs. I mean,
Constitution of the United States, a little
100% true. But even just talking in let's take out the subtext of what you folks do in this space, right? Just the existence of BronxNet looping in young people to have access to this technology, to the forum, to the space. I mean, you folks inherently, whether you are naming it DEI or not, are doing this work,
well, that's
right?
what I said. I never heard the phrase before. All of a sudden it became news, and I was like, oh, is that what it's called?
Yeah, and democracy inherently, as we've seen it grow over time, I mean, even now with a majority woman body council, I mean, it's inherently inclusive and inherently diverse, and that's just the backbone of this city and how we're able to function and progress. And so I don't think that's ever going to leave New York City's values, despite whatever threats will come from Washington in this small moment of time. It is truly ingrained in our system and how we're able to benefit.
Let's just pursue this just a little further. Because people are worried about Medicaid and SNAP, is there something that can be done in the budget to assist, if God forbid these cuts happen, which it appears something's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should be really clear here that Trump's budget is a direct attack on working class families, on immigrants, on people of color, really on vulnerable New Yorkers. Things like cuts to Medicaid are billions of dollars lost to New York. That's uninsuring residents. That's destabilizing our hospitals. Cuts to SNAP leads to massive food insecurity to 3 million New Yorkers, really eliminating revenue for small grocers and farmers markets. And then, of course,
I'm laughing because these are the dialogues we have every week on this program about all different aspects of this. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
But even with the mass deportation agenda, right, we're seeing a chilling effect across the nation. I think people are finally connecting who's really actually doing the hard, laborious work to get the food onto their tables. At the end of the day, to what I said earlier, we're Trump-proofing this budget. We're putting money behind legal services to make sure immigrant New Yorkers are protected. We've bolstered and doubled investments to help maintain people's health care here in the city. We've kept 988 as a critical response, and we've put tons of money into gender-affirmed care. We're really looking at where in the pockets of the city budget can both the administration and the council work together to ensure New Yorkers feel the least amount of impact, along with, like I said, over 3, now 4 budgets, bolstering the rainy day fund, putting money in reserves. Any notion that the city council isn't Trump-proofing the budget or isn't working to protect New Yorkers is really misguided in my
accurate.
sense.
I want to ask you about, because you breezed through it, this intro 808, which I think was a really interesting notion that job listings can't just say, well, we're looking for somebody to do this job. They have to in order to do it, they have to provide certain information that in many cases they never had to do before. Just to explain what that is.
Yeah, what the Majority Whip and I have been focused on is looking at different ways in the private sector we can own up to salary transparency and benefits that occur to help influence how many people or the folks that can move up and down different titles. What we're seeing with this bill particularly is making sure that there's openness in the workspace to kind of talk about what benefits folks are getting, what pay rate they're starting at, what salary increases they receive. And it's typically taboo to go into the workplace and talk about what each person is making, but we're trying to find ways to encourage it so we can see where the wage disparities are. And with that reporting coming to the city, we can make better estimates on what sectors either need to be more transparent in, what they're paying folks and why, or where we need to maybe even put some investments on helping people helping people upskill upward,
right, or
to help them move up
support
in the
an
workplace.
industry of some sort. How do you monitor that? So let's say somebody puts out an ad in a newspaper, or they put something on LinkedIn or somewhere else. I mean, it seems to me, and of course they say, well, we can do whatever we want, First Amendment. And all
So
that.
every single one of the databases that has to have employment opportunities up, whether that's Indeed or you're using LinkedIn or any other of the sites, a job posting in New York City has to have specific criteria now. It has to have a reasonable salary range. So you can't just put in some of the larger corporations that we've seen in the past before these laws, our previous iterations passed. They were putting ranges like 25,000 to 250,000. Now we know that is not helping anyone.
I'll go for the 250. I mean,
Exactly.
Are we bidding here?
Now, if it was as easy as you can choose the salary when they give you the offer, that would be different. But realistically, what we were seeing happening was they're getting thousands of people apply because of such a large range. You can't self-select on whether or not you fit that criteria. So what we've done is we've minimized that, and that they have to have a reasonable salary range posted, and it has to be posted within a specified area of the posting itself. And so I've even had to report some of our city agencies that haven't put them in the right places, but have rectified it. And there is a check and balance here. We see the Human Rights Division actually following up and making sure that they're being posted correctly, or even inquiring on why some regions are so large for certain corporations or titles. And so it's working so far. What we're trying to do with pieces of these bills as well is make sure they're giving us the information so we can all make the system better itself.
I want to ask you about the Bally's Casino project, which was just rejected by the City Council. It would have had $4 billion impact on the Bronx. As a graduate of Preston High School, you're probably happy with the bailout they provided for Preston High School. What do you make of all of this, that this happened? I know many of the Bronx Council members and the borough president as well were very in favor of this project.
Yeah, I mean, I'm deeply disappointed that the project itself failed. I think ultimately we're not losing an opportunity on a single item like a casino. We're really losing a larger investment that we're really going to see happen for the Bronx as a whole borough. It's union jobs. It's a competitive market to be created in the borough that we don't have right now. And so for me, it's a disappointing vote that occurred. But at the very least, what we're seeing is some conversation and dialogue sparking in this borough on what we should be fighting for and what investments that we deserve to see come in.
It's an interesting dialogue because Bally's went very far to support all kinds of Bronx initiatives. I mentioned the Preston High School initiative. Maybe it's a bit of a message to other corporations, and I'm saying it directly, that, maybe it'll work if you do something for the community. In addition, you'll get benefit because you'll be able to run whatever business it is, but you'll be able to, get support from the entire council delegation.
What I'm really hoping this garners or this begins to mobilize on is that everyday Bronxites that maybe are not necessarily plugged into how engaged they need to be on these larger projects, even if they're not directly in the area, they might need to have more engagement on it. I think what we've seen in other applications for casinos throughout other boroughs was communities were more vocal and I'm indifferent, but I think it'll be beneficial because of X, or like I really desire this because I frequent, Empire City and Yonkers, or
Right.
whatever the case was. I think the borough needs to be more engaged on the larger projects that will make a generational impact and
On the
have
borough.
and have larger opportunity for our families.
We just have a minute left. Is there anything I didn't ask you about yet? I said we weren't going to do a long intro because we were going to reach this moment. Is there anything else you want to just mention before? I could come up with many questions, but because you are the majority leader, what do you got?
I don't know. I don't have anything off the top of my
All right,
brain,
so
but
I'm going to ask you. I'll ask you real quick. But you got to. Catholic high schools are closing. We lost All Hallows. We lost Sacred Heart, Immaculate Conception, Visitation. What happens to the properties? That's a big thing because that really affects neighborhoods.
Yeah, we've seen a variety of things happen. Some went private and have, either created a charter school or different, private school
Which are
options.
helpful as opposed to somebody saying market rate housing in a neighborhood that doesn't get market rate.
Yeah. I think it's helpful, obviously, for families. We want parents to choose to send their child to whichever school that they desire, and we also need as many school institutions as we can get our hands on.
Education is generally a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amanda Farías, thank you so much. Congratulations on being the majority leader of the City Council. And we could have gone another hour, I'm sure, but we didn't have it. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate it. Now that concludes tonight's program. We want to thank our producer, Rebecca Hemmick. We have a wonderful BronxNet production and editing crew. But really, and she'll agree with me, it's about you two. It's you, the people of the Bronx, who are important to us here at BronxNet and, of course, on this program. I will see you next time. Good night.